The cabin lights glowed softly, casting a warm amber hue across the rows of passengers settling into their seats. The hum of the engines blended with murmured conversations, the shuffle of bags, and the occasional chime of a flight attendant's announcement. It was an ordinary evening flight from New York to Los Angeles, the kind of routine journey people take without expecting anything remarkable. For Daniel Hayes, it was supposed to be just that, ordinary. A business trip, another presentation, another night in a hotel room. He had done this hundreds of times. He knew the routine. Suit pressed, laptop charged, polite smile at the check-in desk, and a glass of water before takeoff. He didn't expect the flight to change him in any way. As he slid into his seat in first class, Daniel loosened his tie slightly and leaned back. He looked every bit the successful man he was, mid-30s, sharp suit, calm confidence. But beneath that polished look, there was a quiet fatigue. The kind that comes not from lack of sleep but from living a life that has lost its color. He glanced out the window, watching the lights on the runway flicker like distant stars. He thought about his meeting the next morning, the numbers he'd memorized, and the call he'd promised to make to his assistant. It was all routine, predictable, empty in a way he couldn't quite admit. A few minutes later, the seat beside him was still empty. He assumed it would be another business traveler, someone like him, with a laptop and noise-canceling headphones. But then he saw a small figure stepping into the aisle. A little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, clutching a green backpack almost as big as her torso. Her blonde hair was tied into a loose ponytail, and she wore a pink dress that swayed with every step. Behind her, a flight attendant followed, holding her boarding pass. "Hi, sweetheart," the attendant said kindly. "This is your seat, right here." Daniel looked around, expecting to see a parent or guardian. But there was no one. The girl stopped in front of him, eyes wide and curious. "Hi," she said softly, looking up at him. Daniel blinked, surprised. Hi there." The attendant smiled apologetically. "She's an unaccompanied minor, traveling to LA to see her mom. Would you mind keeping an eye out for her during the flight? I'll check on her regularly." Daniel hesitated. He wasn't exactly a kid person. But before he could respond, the little girl climbed onto the seat beside him and started unpacking her backpack. A small stuffed rabbit, a coloring book, and a pack of crayons that spilled onto the tray table. "Sure," Daniel said finally. "No problem. Thank you," the attendant replied with relief. "She's a sweet one. Just a bit nervous about flying alone." Daniel nodded. The attendant left, and the girl turned toward him with a serious expression, as if studying him. "You don't look like a dad," she said suddenly. Daniel laughed quietly. "No, I'm not a dad." She nodded, satisfied. "Okay. You can still sit next to me." "Thanks," he said, amused. "I'm Lily," she continued, extending her tiny hand. "What's your name?" "Daniel." "Hi, Daniel." Her smile was bright enough to melt even his tired heart. As the plane began to taxi down the runway, Lily looked out the window, gripping the armrest. Her small fingers trembled. "Is it scary?" she asked. "Only if you've never done it before," Daniel replied. "But it's safe. Like riding in a big car that flies." "That's weird," she said, scrunching her nose. "Cars don't fly." Daniel smiled. "You're right. That's what makes planes special." When the engines roared and the plane lifted off the ground, Lily gasped, pressing her face against the window. "We're flying. We're really flying," she whispered. Daniel found himself watching her instead of his tablet. Her wonder was contagious. Pure, unfiltered joy. Somewhere deep inside, he felt something stir. After a while, when the plane leveled off, Lily turned back to him. "Do you have a daughter?" He shook his head. "No. Just me." "Oh." She looked thoughtful. "My daddy went to heaven. Mommy says he's watching me from the stars." Daniel froze. The words hit like a gentle punch to the chest. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. She nodded, playing with her stuffed rabbit. It's okay. Mommy says when I'm brave, he smiles. So I try to be brave on planes. He swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. You're doing a great job, Lily. I think he's really proud of you. She smiled again, small but sincere. The flight continued in quiet companionship. Daniel helped her open her juice box, found her lost crayon, and listened as she told him stories about her school, her cat named Marshmallow, and how she was going to surprise her mom for her birthday. Every few minutes, she'd look up and ask a question that somehow went straight to his heart. Why do grown-ups always look sad when they're quiet? He didn't have an answer. Do you have someone waiting for you when you land? Again, no answer. Not really. He realized how lonely his life had become. His world was filled with meetings, deals, and numbers, but no laughter. No warmth. Somewhere over the Midwest, Lily fell asleep with her head resting on his arm, her small hand clutching his sleeve. Daniel sat still, afraid to move. He watched her breathe, slow, peaceful, trusting. He thought about his own childhood, about his mother reading bedtime stories, about the way his father used to tuck him in. Somewhere along the way, he had traded those simple joys for ambition. And now, sitting beside this little girl, he felt something he hadn't in years: tenderness. Hours passed. The plane was quiet. The city lights below glimmered like scattered diamonds. When Lily stirred, rubbing her eyes, she looked up at him and whispered, "Did I sleep long?" "Yeah," he said softly. "Almost the whole flight." "Did you sleep?" He smiled faintly. "No, someone had to make sure the plane didn't fall." She giggled. "You're funny." As the flight attendants prepared for landing, Lily began packing her crayons and rabbit. But one crayon rolled under Daniel's seat. He reached down to grab it and noticed something else: a folded piece of paper, tucked into her backpack's front pocket. It had a heart drawn in crayon and the words, "For Mommy." Lily noticed him looking. "That's my surprise card," she said proudly. "I made it for Mommy's birthday. It says, 'Thank you for being my hero.'" Daniel nodded slowly. "That's beautiful. I want to give it to her first thing when I see her," Lily added. "She's been sad lately. I want her to smile again." He felt his throat tighten. "I think she'll love it, Lily." When the plane landed, passengers began gathering their belongings. The flight attendant returned, smiling warmly at Lily. "All right, sweetheart, your mom will be waiting at the gate." Lily grabbed her backpack but hesitated. She turned to Daniel. "Will I see you again?" Daniel blinked, caught off guard. "Maybe," he said gently. "The world's a small place." She nodded, serious again. "Okay. I'll tell Mommy about you. She says nice people are angels who don't know they're angels yet." He smiled, feeling a lump rise in his throat. "Then you're definitely one of them." As she walked away hand in hand with the attendant, Daniel felt something in his chest, a strange ache mixed with warmth. He watched from his seat as Lily spotted her mother beyond the glass gate, a woman with tired eyes and open arms. The girl ran to her, shouting, "Mommy!" and leapt into her embrace. The mother lifted her up, holding her close, tears glistening on her cheeks. Lily whispered something in her ear, then handed her the folded card. Even from a distance, Daniel saw the woman's expression change: surprise, then a trembling smile that broke through exhaustion. She knelt, hugging her daughter tightly. And for a moment, Daniel couldn't look away. The world outside the plane seemed softer somehow, more alive. He waited until most passengers had disembarked before he stood up. As he grabbed his briefcase, the flight attendant approached him again. "She was lucky to sit next to you," she said kindly. Daniel smiled faintly. "I think it's the other way around." Outside the gate, he saw Lily and her mother walking away. The little girl turned once, spotting him. She waved with both hands, grinning from ear to ear. He waved back. And in that simple gesture, that innocent connection between a weary man and a hopeful child, something changed. For the first time in years, Daniel didn't hurry. He didn't check his watch or think about the next meeting. He just stood there, watching them disappear into the crowd, his heart unexpectedly light. That night, in his hotel room, he couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, city lights flickering below. On his desk lay the presentation notes he was supposed to review. Instead, he found himself thinking about Lily's words. Nice people are angels who don't know they're angels yet. He smiled at the thought. Maybe kindness wasn't about big gestures or grand plans. Maybe it was about the small moments. Listening, helping, caring, even for a stranger. The next morning, before his meeting, he stopped by a toy store near the hotel. He bought a small green backpack, just like Lily's, and filled it with school supplies, crayons, and a stuffed rabbit. When the cashier asked if it was for his daughter, he paused, then said softly, "It's for someone who reminded me how to be kind." He donated the bag to a children's charity before heading to his meeting. And for the first time in a long while, Daniel Hayes walked into a room not as a tired businessman, but as someone who understood the quiet power of kindness.